Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the Smart Even podcast, the show that helps you learn how to get better at door to door sales. I'm your host, Alex, and in this episode, we're going to dive deep into what it's like being a sales manager with our special guest, Riyadh Bahar. Riyadh is a veteran sales manager who's been selling for over 5 years. He's going to share with us his insights, tips, and stories on how to succeed in this challenging but rewarding industry. So stay tuned and let's get started. Riyadh, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Alex.
It's a pleasure. So you've been in this industry for a really long time, almost 5 years, and that's a really impressive accomplishment. How did you first get started in this field, and what did your first day look like?
Yeah, so how I got started in this field was I used to work in a job that's just hourly. Um, Long story short, I used to work really, really hard, and I guess that was my only um, the way I would usually work. And I would literally see my coworkers sleeping on the job. Would literally be sleeping on the job. And one day it just hit me. I was like, why am I putting all this effort if we're getting paid the exact same? So speeding up, one of my friends actually was in this industry, and beforehand, you never really like apply in a cold way to this industry. You just get in knowing someone. Um, and I was like, wow, I saw him improve in quite some time. I thought it was a pyramid scheme the first time I actually was considering it. But yeah, I decided back then, this was around 2018, where I signed up for the summer sales job back in Vivint, and I made my way down to Winnipeg. This goes into the next question was what did my first day look like? So I had to learn the pitch on the airplane. It was me and my best friend who actually decided, like, you know what, let's go make the most out of our life. So we were on our way to Winnipeg. I was like somewhat getting my pitch down. He was a fantastic memorizer, so he actually got his pitch down, and yeah, we arrived there. I still didn't know what I was like gonna be selling besides like cameras and stuff. I didn't really understand home security that much.
That's awesome. Sorry to interrupt. Can you just tell us like what the pitch looked like?
Yeah, so what the pitch was just like it was a whole document. It was just 12 pages, and the first door approach was like a one-page document where the only thing that was told to me is like you have to memorize it. And you have to memorize it verbatim. This is going to be literally like your Bible, like within this industry. And then I was like, okay. I was like, I'll just try memorizing. I wasn't like the smartest guy too, so um, excuse me, but yeah, I memorized the pitch. The day I arrived, I actually shadowed my manager. His name is Afan, but yeah, he went out there. He crushed it that day. He sold five, and I was like, dude, this is so easy. I'm gonna sell like 10 tomorrow. Um, but I guess that him selling five just showed me that it was possible. Um, the next day when it started, I was feeling really, really anxious. Actually, there was a guy. He was one of the top rookies in the office. I used to have a speech impediment back then, and I was a very, very awkward kid. And he told me, he's like, Riyadh, you're not going to do good. He's like, I'm just being brutally honest. I was like, what? Like, who's this guy telling me that I'm not going to be do good, right? And I was like, screw that. So we're on the way to the area. I still didn't know like my process or anything. Um, and I told my manager, I was like, dude, are you gonna like what do I do? Like when I got out of the car, he was like, you figure it out. He shut the door and he just drove away. So this was
Really?
like 40 degrees temperature in Winnipeg. I was fasting actually. And I was like, what the heck? So just me being that nervous kid, having the thoughts of the guy who just told me I couldn't do it, I go ahead and knock that first door. And yeah, this lady opens up. She was like, what do you want? And then I forgot my name. I forgot the company I was working for. I mentioned an orange sign, and then a bird shot on my phone. I
Oh
still
my
have that
God.
phone to this day. I use that as like a good luck charm. But at that moment, I was like, what the heck? And she was just like, she just started laughing at me, and I was like, can I get a tissue? And she just slammed the door on me. I was like, holy shit, this is harder than I expected. Um, I actually called my manager's brother, Zishan, and I told him right after, I was like, dude, I don't think this is for me. I think that's it. And
After the
then
first door?
Yeah, after the first door, I just
Okay.
I wanted to give up, and I he told me, he's like, Riyadh, let me shift your paradigm. And the paradigm obviously is the lens we see the world in. And
Mhm.
he was like, what are the chances that a bird's gonna like shit on your phone on your very first door? He's like, you might think of that as bad luck. I think of that as good luck. And even though he just, shifted my mindset on the matter, he just reminded me of the overall goal. I did go to the summer to improve in my what you call soft skills. I had a crazy stutter, and I knew that I wanted to eventually have a business later on, and he would always tell me, if you can become a successful entrepreneur, that will make it so much easier when you have your own business one day, and when you become an entrepreneur. So long story short, I kept developing throughout the day. We actually started that day around like 9 a.m. And one of my last doors, my manager, he told me, he's like, Rid, I'm gonna pick you up. I was like, dude, I feel like I'm getting better. I was like, just wait off. I'm just gonna knock a couple of doors. He's like, okay, I'll pick you up last. Before he came, I knocked on this one door. It was around like 11 o'clock at nighttime. I still haven't broken my fast because I was just so hooked on getting better. And I actively saw myself getting better throughout the whole day. And I met this guy, his name was Caesar. He was eating an apple at 11 o'clock, and his lights were the only ones on in the whole neighborhood. And I was doing my pitch. At that point, my pitch was really, really good. And all I remember just feeling the AC. It was so hot that day. I felt the air conditioning from his house, and I was like, and he was one of those guys who were just like listening, but he was like looking at his family, watching TV. He wasn't really, really listening. I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? I'm just gonna take the leap of faith. I was like, yeah, I just need a table. I took that step inside, and he was like, okay. And I was like, holy shit. So I kept
Wow.
walking inside, and I still remember the blast of AC. I felt like I could fall asleep there. And the first thing I remember asking for was just like a glass of water. And that, till this day, was the best glass of water I've ever drank in my life. Um, and I finally broke my fast. But yeah, the biggest part of this whole story was that Caesar and Cecilia, his wife, they were pretty much um, open people. They liked me. I think I sold them on me. But the final boss came. The big decision maker was their son-in-law, and he was a sales manager at a
Okay.
car. So he was like, Riyadh, obviously you sold my parents, my in-laws over here. I won't allow you to have the sale unless you answer 12 questions. And he's like, you could reach out to your manager, you could find out whatever you need, but you have to answer these 12 questions in order for you to get the sale. And I told myself, I was like, holy shit, man, like this is like nearly like midnight. My car group was waiting outside, and I was like crying, and I was like calling my manager. I was like, dude, what's the answer to this question? What's the warranty like? And he was just setting me up for success. And yeah, I ended up answering all the questions.
But he
His
wanted you to
last
make the sale.
No, exactly. He wanted me to be set up properly going forward. And the reason why he did this to me was that he said on his very first day, someone did that to him. So he's like,
Okay.
I'm paying it forward. So
It's a
uh,
ritual.
yeah. So the very last hidden question was that, hey, it's midnight, come back tomorrow. And he was walking away, and like I was smiling at that point, but I was like, you know what, like I I'm not going to leave without a sale. And that's when I use psychological pricing to say that this is the reason why we offset your installation prices. And yeah, I ended up getting that sale, and it was the best feeling ever. Because of that one guy, I still want to meet him. After actually 4 years, I got to meet the family, and I sold on the very first day last year. But yeah, apparently he still remembers me. It is very, very nice. But I want to thank him because of that very, very hard first sale, it helped me get many other sales, um, which call over the course of the weeks, and I ended off the summer pretty good. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So that first sale was like harder than what most of the other ones were, but it really prepared you.
Yeah,
And I really love
absolutely.
that story. It's like talk about getting your foot in the door, right? You just asked if you could come in um and you sat at their table.
Hmm. Yeah,
Awesome.
just assumed it. So I know in sales they say always make assumptions. It's always good to be corrected because it shows engagement. But if you're not taking that leap of faith, then you don't know. if that's going to stop you from progressing to that next part of the sales process, you know?
Yeah, and you're assuming that you're gonna get a positive reaction from them, right? I think that's really important.
Yeah,
Like they actually
absolutely.
want you to be there. They actually want you to actually they're good. Like you're providing value to them. So that's really cool. And your story as a whole is like it's not just about the job and about the career for you, but like it's also about the personal development, like um overcoming your own obstacles in a way with this job, which is really inspiring, I think. So I just want to ask you, what are some of the benefits that you've seen in your experience selling security door to door? Like, what are some of the pros compared to like picking up the phone? Like, what do you like about doing door to door?
Yeah, I guess the one thing for door to door, because I did do cold calling for a bit too. Um, the one thing I always say is that if I work at a corporate store, for instance, I have to wait for people to come into my store and just and then go from there. You know, the cool thing about door to door is that obviously the greatest like successful people, CEOs, what was it, Steve Jobs knocked doors. And for me, I was like, okay, if I'm gonna do something really, really hard, might as well do it in a way where I could just continuously not have my momentum like split. Because the cool thing about door knocking is that instead of waiting for consumers to come to you, let's just say if you're at like a flagship store, you actually go to their house where they live. So there's so many, there's X amount of people out there that you continuously keep prospecting and reaching. So the biggest thing for me was when I looked at it, it was just reach. I could reach a lot more people and have a good conversation. In terms of cold calling, I mean, you could, probably have a huge amount of reach too. But what I found was like the one thing, it's harder for people to slam the door on you, the better you are at engaging them. Whereas on the phone, all they really have to do is just hang up, and you lose that
Right.
contact for So yeah, I think that's the some of the benefits of just like door knocking. Some of the challenges, obviously, is that you might be knocking for a long time and environmental factors might come into play. Like one day this year in Regina, it started snowing randomly in the middle of summer. I was like, "Why the heck is it snowing?" And but yeah, it's that's one thing that could come to play. But there's so many things that we can actually do to set ourselves up for success by like wearing a jacket. Like if a rep comes to me
Yeah.
and be like, "Dude, it's raining," I'm like, "Exactly. People are going to be home today. They don't want to go out. Wear a rain jacket." So it's I find that door knocking keeps my momentum very, very fresh and keeps me really, really sharp, within sales.
Awesome. That's really awesome. Would you say that there's more benefits than there are challenges when it comes to doing door to door?
Oh, absolutely. I definitely think that there's more benefits. Whereas like for instance, it's easy to put a face behind your name. You know,
Right.
it's you can see yourself actively uh, like fitting in with the community, having a lot of people know you, and I find it easier building trust because trust is a huge thing. In order to get like more referrals and to kill it in that neighborhood. So yeah, I think those are just some things of how door to door might benefit um, many individuals who are just looking to go into sales.
Awesome. Yeah. So when you're training your team, um, what are some of the things that you personally do to help them build that trust, build rapport? Some of the things that you mentioned before, like how does training work with your team?
Yeah, so the first thing I always do when new people come in, a lot of people they don't have sales experience. I mean, they usually go into like an entry level sales job just to learn how to be a salesperson. The one thing I do is I have to change the fact of customer service to sales expert because even though they're correlated, they're totally separate. So just there's a reference called the meter man or like the sales doctor, where the meter man just goes to a house, doesn't really necessarily ask for your permission. He just sets up his station and assumes this way. He transitions into the meter, he does his job, and he's out. And for the sales doctor, when you go to a doctor's office, you don't really tell the doctor what to do. You might tell him your problems, there's things that you're facing, and he gives you a diagnosis. And that's how I actually view this job. Whereas like I'm the sales expert going to people's homes. It's a very selective process that I don't work with everyone. And because I'm the most knowledgeable knocking in that area at the current moment, I'm here to help you to increase the value of your life, maybe save you some on your finances, or just improve the quality of your household, you know? So I start there, just like more on the how to actually angle yourself within this industry. Then I noticed that the most successful salespeople are the ones who are most knowledgeable and just know their prices really, really well. People trust experts and people trust individuals who are very, very knowledgeable, and just like not having any instance where you seem like, oh, I don't know this answer. And even if you don't, like, oh, I know how to get this answer, you know?
That's awesome. Yeah, both of those points I think are super effective. So first you're doing like you're almost changing the frame, right? Instead of I think when people if they get started in this job and they haven't done sales before, they might think that they're taking away something when like because you're going to their door, right? Like it seems like you're asking them for something, but in reality, like it's you that's giving to them.
Absolutely. The only thing we're really trying to understand is there is some issues that they're facing or just like what are their hot buttons. Because another thing too is that when people don't really know what they want unless they hear a lot of things and like, oh, this is how you create a need. You know, our job's to create a need, um, not a want. So yeah, it's the thing we're selling. It is really really important. I know my job paid off for me in my first year as a rookie. I actually knocked on a house, um, and it was a newlywed couple. As I walked upstairs, the husband, he was like really, really nice. He welcomed me. He was like, "Oh, I've seen you setting up some of my neighbors." Transitioned to inside his house. As I was walking upstairs, the wife was literally watching door-to-door scams on YouTube.
Really?
Yeah, I'll still remember this moment, and I was like, "What the heck?" And she was like, and she's like, "How are you gonna answer this, right?" And I was like, honestly, and we just started laughing. I was like, what are the chances this is gonna happen? It reminded me of the bird poop moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, long story short, I ended up selling them, and how my job paid off was the very next morning, someone tried to actually break into the house when the husband was at work. The one thing that saved them was that the panic button,
Yeah.
and yeah, the cops came and arrested the the burglar. So at that moment, I was posting on the Facebook group pages the guy who was saving homes, like work with Riyadh, and I was like, wow, it's like I actually felt like my job, I did secure someone's, household. So
That's incredible. Wow. Yeah, you like yeah, I mean that's a huge coincidence that she was watching those videos on YouTube, but the fact that a burglar actually came in after you like installed that system is just
yeah,
another huge coincidence. And that's so powerful, I think, for what you
yeah,
do. And like you can literally you know that you're providing value when you're helping protect families. So that's incredible. Um,
mhm.
what are some of the skills that you're looking for when someone's joining your team? Um, in terms of like how you think that they're how you think that they're going to be successful at the job, like what are the qualities, what are the skills that you're looking for specifically?
Yeah. So there was something I was trained on a long time ago where it talked about the best organization in the world, which is literally the Marine Corps. Um,
Yeah.
and I believe it was in the book by Simon Sinek, or not really sure, but basically, um, they interviewed the Marines and they said, "How do you make your organization the strongest organization out there?" Um, and they actually broke it down into four quadrants where they tested skills versus trustworthiness. And they broke it down from high to low. What they usually said is that every organization, when you have those individuals who are very, very skilled, people usually always hire them because what a business thinks about is like, oh, they're going to give me X amount of revenue. They're going to be producing at a high level. If they're trustworthiness, we call them a unicorn. But most of the time, they're not very trustworthy, and that's why a lot of businesses fail because when a bad root gets bad or rotten, it affects the whole tree. You know. Um, so long story short, when they were interviewing this Marines or the organization, they said that they don't really care of where skill level is at. They don't care if an individual is highly skilled or low skilled. I mean, if they're highly skilled and trustworthy, of course we'll sign them up. Most of the time, they actually look for people who are whose skills are not fully developed, but they're really, really high in trustworthiness. So for me, I implemented that model into what I look for when I sit down with people. Because how do you check trustworthiness within one interview? You can't
Yeah.
really. Things you can look for is just character, their respect, and how they present themselves. And you just have to get good at hiring and firing. But the one thing is that if you attract and if you hire people who are just like yourself, if you believe in your values a lot, it will transform to the whole team. So the one thing I look for now is people who could show me acts of trustworthiness or respect. And because skill can always be learned.
Okay, awesome. And what are some of those specific attributes that you're looking for? Because people don't have a lot of time, right? You're not talking for, 5 hours with someone. Like the interview is not, that long. It's maybe, 20 to 30 minutes and, you're getting a first impression in a lot shorter time frame than that. So like what specific attributes like showcase and demonstrate that trustworthiness to you specifically?
Um, well, I guess with trustworthy people, if I usually within my hiring process, I love talking about like these, or I love using psychological questions. Um, Sometimes these questions are just really, really hard to hear in the interview process. And if they somewhat lie, you could tell if someone's lying or just like bluffing or um, it usually doesn't rub me the right way. But yeah, it's like obviously I get to try to know them and decision making, uh, like how they make their decisions by giving them scenarios of what to do. Um, for instance, like the famous question, if you're coming up towards a deadline, you have a project to hand in, would you delay it to hand it in really, really good, or would you send it in early by just meeting that deadline? Just something along those lines, and just seeing how they answer that. Sometimes it could show if they're good at cutting corners or just like, oh, I'll just do this. And some people actually say that. I don't know why, but it shows me, oh, okay, maybe they're not the most honest worker, you know. But yeah, it just just understanding and developing that relationship because, like I mentioned before, it's going to be hard to see what trustworthiness is right off the bat. But you could tell how someone like treats their character, their lifestyle in the back, or how they are to their peers, or how would your best friend describe you? You know, like that question over there. Um, but yeah, it's just getting to know them and seeing if they fit in within the culture. And the best way I test this method out is that it's not only me who hires people. I would say my team hires people. Whereas when you bring someone new into your organization, it's a team that actually accepts them. If the team doesn't accept them, you know that they're probably not fitting into the culture. So, you get rid of them. But I'd rather have people who fit within the culture who group think like me and share the same values.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense. So not only do you have the questions that you have, but you also have a feel for what you think about the candidate based on your experience, and then you have a third, fourth, maybe fifth set of eyes, or like the entire team that is vetting these people coming in. So that's, I think, a really effective process that you have. So once they actually join your team, and not just for the new team members, but for the entire team as a whole, like what are some of the best practices that you go over when it comes to going door to door? Like what are some of the things that you're discussing most often with your team, like every week, every month? What are the things that come up again and again and again in terms of best practices?
I guess best practices, and our organization did a good job of having this theme over and over. Just like you always want to build on ethics and integrity. Um, excuse me. I took a course on finding your legacy, ethics, and integrity in university, and that actually taught me a lot about myself. You know, and I feel like before you try to become a great in one aspect, you have to be knowing where your ethics and values lie. So the one thing for me, and then you could see with my trainings, is every time I train on a new product within TELUS, or if I'm training a new guy, I always start off with ethics, just to go over it because we've seen people in the past get fired for doing things of like fraud and or whatnot, but or they just did not know. And it's my job as a manager to make sure we tell people what's right and what's wrong, you know. And after that, I think your second question is how do you train people or like what's the best way when they get started?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I break down like within our vendor here, it's within TELUS. I break it down to three aspects, where 30% goes towards mobility, uh, the other 30% goes towards FFH, and the last 40% is security. Um, and I just start from there. I was like, what's an item that we use every single day that we could sell at a high frequency? It's probably mobility. You know, like a lot more people are are more comfortable making that transaction. So just starting off there and then just building on the product knowledge from there, not making someone learn everything at once.
Would you say it's easier doing mobility, especially for newcomers, because they're able to get more sales and they have a faster like feedback loop?
Hmm. I think learning mobility first is actually one of the best things to learn when you get started. No matter if you go to the east or west, because I know there's like restriction on you can't sell internet out in the east just yet. But the one thing, the reason why I always tell my guys to learn mobility first is that we're not the only ones knocking these doors. There's other vendors out there. There's a lot of competitors in this industry. And they've been hearing the same pitch over and over again. The one thing that I rarely hear people pitch is mobility. So if you be different, it buys you a lot of time. When you first knock a door, you're just trying to buy a lot of time because people judge you within the first couple of seconds. How your parents or what you sound like and what are you selling, right? If it's just an instant, oh, someone already came and said this and not interested, it becomes much more harder for them to do their job of shooing you off. If you come in with a different angle, that's something that they don't really hear, you know?
Yeah, exactly. That makes a lot of sense. They're not painting you in the same light as the 10 other people that have knocked on your door. You're like a totally new person, and they're actually open to hearing what you have to offer. Because maybe if maybe you actually do have something, and in this case, you do have value to offer to the customers, but they hear that first opening, and then they just think about like all the experiences that they had before with people coming to their door. So I think that's really cool how you're able to offer like a fresh perspective just by changing the product, selling something different. Um, so if you are knocking on a door and someone has had a bad experience with a different rep, or they're maybe skeptical about what you have to offer, maybe they're watching like videos, as you said, on YouTube about scams, and they think like anyone that's coming to their door is here to like scam them. Like, how do you deal with those kind of people? Do you have systems and processes in place to be able to overcome those beliefs?
Yeah, before I talk about what I do that helps me, I would say what our company does that really, really works is that obviously, hopefully, when you're door knocking, you work for a reputable company that people could just find online, that you're licensed and everything too. So the cool thing is that if I meet those skeptical customers who trust is a really big thing, and it can be a small thing too, where they just have to see if you're legitimate. What I usually do, and this actually happened in the last blitz I was running with my team in Chilliwack, where I met one customer and she was like, "Oh, how do I know you're legit? I've had a lot of people try to scam me in the past." I was like, "That's horrible." I was like, before I go into anything, let me just take some time to ease your mind, show you that I am a representative who could sell these items. So I I pulled up my rep card. It's a tool that a lot of people in the door-to-door industry use, where you can see active reviews of the other people you helped out. Maybe they can recognize a name from there. Another thing too is that you can verify yourself on rep card. You can verify your ID. You could also call in to TELUS to have them verify you on the back end. Right. Another big thing is that when you have access to DDC1, it shows you can access someone's account. So for instance, if I'm with the customer, if they're skeptical, like, "Hey, Mr. Customer, obviously I treat the integrity of my job really, really seriously. I'll show you everything beforehand to show you that I am legitimate within this business. Also here, as you can see, this is your account. I won't access it without your permission. But as you can see, I have tools and what you call methods to help you see how I can actually improve some of the things that you actually have with TELUS, or yeah, and if I was that bad guy, I probably wouldn't even have access to your house.
Yeah.
Another thing I do that like segues myself into the next part is um, I hit them with a lot of empathy. You could use tactical empathy, but with when you empathize with the customer and you really hear them out, it gives them a place where they could just vent. Because sometimes they just didn't have the proper person to vent to, or when they call in and try to vent, the customer service rep is just like, "Oh, we can't help you. Goodbye." And they just have a bad experience. So I just addressed it. I'd be a human before I'm a sales rep. Like that sucks. Like I would react the same way. And then I just comfort them. Like, no, my job's a little bit different. Usually what I found was that there's a lot of miscommunication. And when a customer gets stuck, there's no really proper modes of where do I get help from. So as long as what makes me very special than other sales representatives outside in that world is that they'll have me. I'm their personal agent. I'm someone they could contact. They'll always be able to help them. Or if I don't know the answer, I'll direct them the way that can get them the answer to. And just reassuring them of just that. And I like to save all my customers' contacts on my phone just to show them that, hey, like 5 years from now, you're going to save me as a TELUS guy in case you forget my name because my name's really hard. But I will save your name and you can see all my clients that I saved. Reviews are very important for me, so I try to do my best to get a good review on RepCard. So yeah, just giving them a lot of assurance and addressing their concerns and just hearing them out are just like a couple of things that helps me with these skeptical customers too. And the other biggest thing is just knowing your stuff. If you don't know your things, it's just going to make it that much harder to paint that you're that expert.
Yeah, absolutely. You're building a ton of trust throughout the whole process, from the time you're opening the door, um, going through your pitch. And then obviously like if they do have those kind of beliefs, you're able to overcome those with the amount of trust you're building. And by the time you're getting to the close, like you may not have to do anything because you've already like built so much trust, right? Is it fair to say that closing for you is a lot easier because you place so much emphasis on building that rapport and trust, and they almost see you as someone that's on their team um, rather than like an adversary?
Yeah. I always feel like the best way to angle yourself as an ally, you're not trying to be their son or anything, or you know what I'm trying to say. If you're an ally with them, your job's to help them out. One thing with me is that if I could build trust throughout the whole process and break rapport and just have them be comfortable with me, it'll be easier for them to give me a yes. But the one thing I always say is that instead of just waiting until the end to close in, and it's something that we're all taught is always be closing. So close from the very start, get a yes train, and at the end, it's going to relieve a lot of that buying pressure. If they're continuously saying yes throughout the process.
So tell us a little bit about competition in this industry. Um, would you say that competition motivates you in terms of what you do, or would you sort of prefer if like you're the only team in town and you're the only people knocking in that area? Tell us a little bit about how you view competition.
Yeah, so it sounds like competition within the actual job itself for competitors or whatnot. I mean, in an ideal world, if you're in an area and there's no one knocking, it becomes much more easier. Uh, it's not very ideal, or that's not what reality is these days because there's so many people knocking the same doors. What I find is that when it comes to competition from like other competitors, um, what I do, and we actually did this a couple of years ago, is that for one, I'm not trying to make it any harder for them. For us, so I meet up with the manager just to um, ideally how do we make both our programs really really well within the area that we're sharing. Now, if it comes towards being a competitor within what I'm selling, I trust in our product, I trust in our services and how we're actually um, a lot better um, than servicing than many other companies out there. And most of the time, it's really, really hard to find a direct competitor to TELUS because Telus is literally acquiring everyone. Um, so the one thing I see is that we're having a lot of internal competition with different vendors. And how that works is that um, because an area is already knocked before you, everyone's already reciting the same words, selling the same products. It goes back to my previous point that I mentioned earlier, where it's just having different angles and just being different. A lot of time we could pre-handle that a lot of people were already knocking this area. You could actually use them knocking before to talk about successes. Whereas, hey, it was really, really successful last time we were here. That's when we're coming back, you know? Or you could actually have a different angle. If a lot of people are hearing like, oh yeah, they already talked about security, they already talked about internet, maybe lean in with mobility. And that's the cool thing of like knowing each one of your products really, really well. You could take a proper angle and actually make your job a lot more easier.
Okay, awesome. That's perfect. Um, so you talked a little bit about mobility and some of the different angles that you're using. Um, what would you say are some of the opportunities and trends that you see in this industry?
Opportunities and trends. I mean, the one thing that excites me is that obviously with the CRTC controlling the whole telecommunications across Canada, we see that there's such deals in the market where Rogers is looking to to acquire Shaw. What that means is that because monopolies are looked down upon within Canada, if they're coming out here to the West, that means they're able to sell everything, and that's per se is a monopoly, which doesn't look good for all the other competitors such as Telus and Bell. So it does look like there's going to be a lot more opportunity going forward across Canada. Whereas if they're able to sell everything out west and east, why is it that Telus can only just sell everything in the west and only mobility and security in the east? So it just shows that it does like lengthen the industry a lot more. Um, and yeah, what excites me is that every single year there's new products that are getting rolled out. Um, like for instance, a big thing for us was that Shaw had this thing where you could just talk into your remote. It was the dumbest objection that the customer could say, like, "Oh, I love it, but can you talk into the remote?" We're like, we can't, but now you can. So it's it is really exciting. We're already the most competitive in terms of pricing and in terms of quality. Telus has been like the number one telecommunications company in Canada. So yeah, it's exciting.
That's awesome. What do you think about like security versus mobility? Like, where does most of the opportunity lie in the next um, 5 years?
I mean, there was a saying, if your grandma already knows about something, that's how you know it's too late. Before security or smart home used to be a disruptive technology. Now just like a common household thing where people have smart homes. Even for mobility, I guess the one thing that makes mobility a little bit more fresher is just that the development of 5G. You know, Not a lot of people are, having the best 5G because there's not enough infrastructure out there. But I would say mobility in terms of security, right now, security is a very common thing, um, especially smart homes these days. And mobility, there's a higher attachment rate. So that's something everyone will continuously use. So I would say that, if you could adapt, and our CEO, he actually came to our office in the summer and he was like, Riyadh, you got to start selling mobility. These are the stats. And I would say that I'm not as big as a stats guy as him, but stats do excite me. But like for my own ego, I was like, no, I'm a security guy. I know how to sell security um, quite comfortably. You're not going to change up my approach. And he's like, no, trust me. Look at these numbers. And I was like, okay. So I started leading in mobility. And yeah, I just noticed that I had a higher attachment rate to security and it helped me increase my sales. So yeah,
Awesome. Yeah. So branching out really worked out for you.
yeah, diversifying my approaches and just having different angles does help me within this job.
Would you say that both of those are sort of evergreen? Like they're gonna keep working in the next 5 to 10 years, both mobilities and security?
Uh, yeah, I would say so. Um, because I guess my biggest year, even in this industry, and this just goes into a total like a side thing, which is that what's happening in the US, a recession is about to hit. Every time
Yeah.
there's a recession or anytime there's an economic like pushback, there's a lot of crime that goes into place, and when there's a lot of crime, people need a lot of like security, which is really, really nice. And yeah, like in terms of mobility, a lot of people have to stay connected, and there's a lot more value in terms of where you could get service. I know that TELUS, for instance, are able to service a lot more rural areas compared to many other competitors. So it's just nice, like it's nice to sell something that's people are already willing to accept, and just with the prices and the quality of the plan, it is really, really an easy selling feature.
Awesome. So like there's a lot of longevity um, in both of those products, which is really great to hear. So one of the things that I've noticed talking to you, um, obviously you're in a very, very high pressure job, right? It's not easy going up to people's doors. It's not easy managing a team for you, and you have a lot of responsibility. Um, how do you actually balance your personal and professional life as a sales manager?
Yeah, so for me, I guess the simplest things is that just having a proper schedule. If I didn't have a proper schedule, it would just make my job so much harder, within this of just like being Riyadh. The cool thing is that I have a proper work schedule that allows me to actually block off time for my personal life. Um, and it just keeps me really, really relevant. To touch on that part a little bit more, because I was having a conversation with a rep. Um, this is what I learned. Some people, when they learn sales, they try to treat everything like a sale. In terms of like personal and relationships, you can't really teach or you can't really converse with your peers outside of work in a sales manner. Like if you have
How does that look like? Can you like give me an example?
yeah, like for example, I remember there was this one guy who would be like, "Oh, dude, like I closed my girlfriend on to and watching a good movie or blah blah
Yeah.
blah." It led up to be like, I don't know what's genuine or not, or it gets really, really annoying. Humans are more complex.
Yeah.
Um, I truly feel like sales teaches you a lot more empathy, just to show a new perspective and a new light. So you should take those into play. But humans are so complex that you don't apply sales into when you just talk to your friends or talk or just like, for example, talk to your family or your or in a relationship, So just also separating my work life from my personal life gives me a lot more comfort in just like spreading the longevity of this job because burnout does exist, And it goes down to what I tell a lot of my guys is like rest without regret is super important. Even the best athletes in this world, they have proper rest days and treat this as a sport. It is a sport. We got the season, we have a lot of fun. It used to be very, very seasonal, but consistency and a proper schedule will beat any, extrinsic or internal motivators that are slowly diminishing.
Yeah. So the recovery aspect is like a really important part of the job where you're recuperating, and then you're able to attack that new season with a fresh start.
Absolutely. Can I
And
use
then
some
obviously,
Pomodoro?
yeah.
I think I'm pronouncing that right.
Oh yeah, the Pomodoro
Yeah.
technique. Yeah, 25
So
minutes.
Pomodoro, a lot of things that I do, and I just crunch it out. And I set up a list of order of priority. The thing that's the most important, or I have to prioritize those, I should get rid of those faster than the other ones that I can slowly just keep chipping away at. And it helps me keep my mental fortitude very, very like stable. And yeah, just it allows me to have less burnout.
Yeah, I do that too. I have it like bookmarked on my browser, the Pomodoro timer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Cool. So, if someone wants to be a sales manager, someone who's an aspiring sales manager, Riyadh, tell me what advice do you have for these people? Um, what do you think is going to work for them? How can they be where you are today? Um, give them a little bit of advice.
Yeah, I think it's you know, obviously becoming a good sales manager starts off with becoming a leader. If you were showing leadership qualities, don't be afraid to step up. Because when I was a rookie, I would always seek out ways to help the team, and I was very, very invested into the team I was in. Um, so yeah, just start off by having like small roles and tasks that you could actually start gradually increasing your responsibilities. Um, Whereas now you have to learn to lead from the front. This goes before you become a sales manager. In every team, there's always a rookie that determines, um, that sets the field for everyone else. If you're in a rookie and you're aspiring to become a manager, you have to be that rookie that dictates that you are going to be that guy who leads everyone else. There's something called the Sasquatch Festival. There's a video where this random guy was dancing, and it showed like how a movement is made. Whereas it wasn't the first guy, but it was always the second guy who joined, who usually led everyone into joining them. You know,
I saw that video. That's really amazing.
yeah. So I watched that growing up, and I was like, wow, like I want to create a movement. I want to have people follow with me, and I don't want to be the only guy up there alone. I want to take a lot of people with me. What I always used to say is that when you become a leader, it's not that you're better than everyone. I treat it like a team captain. I always tell my guys to call me captain, or like I'm their team captain, because it's not to say that I'm the best in the room. I'm just the most experienced. And there's probably things that you guys exceed me that I don't even have. So let me actually give you a platform where you can excel with your skills, you know? And it comes from just leading from the front. You also need to lead from the back, or find someone who could lead from the back as you're leading from the front. And the most important things is knowing your values. If the whole group can group think in, even the group think is looked down upon, but if you can share the same values, if you grow in the same way, it does help your organization grow at a very, very consistent rate, whereas groups won't get affected or turn bad or sour, or rotten. Sorry, I don't know if they would turn sour.
Yeah.
But the one thing I would always say, and this comes from a book that we actually all read, and I gave it to my team. It's called Conscious Capitalism. Um, and on the first page of every book, what I wrote was that you do the right thing, not for any benefit. Um, you do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Sometimes when you learn to step away from a sale that it's honestly not good for you or the organization, it gives you a sense of like empowerment, where it's like, okay, I'm willing to walk away from the sale. I could get more sales out of there. Just understanding that realm, and your guys seeing you do that by leading by example, they'll start doing that, and it'll affect the whole team positively. Um, and there's another thing: when you become a sales manager, you get really, really anxious because you step up. You meet a lot of people who have better results than you. And I remember I was in the room one day when I was starting my leadership journey a couple of years ago, and I was sitting there and I was like, wow, I feel like the smallest fish in the room. I was looking for a stupid reason to quit. And someone told me, he was like, Riyadh, every time you level up in life, you're going to get more anxious, you're going to get nervous, and you're going to get really self-conscious. The reason being is that you're in an environment now where people's standards are so high that you're going to be the average of the circle, or the people you're around. And sometimes if the average is super, super high, it's going to raise you. So when you raise your standards, your results will raise automatically too. So just know that it's all a process. When you feel anxious and self-conscious, that's how you know that you're on the right track. And to end it off with this last quote, and this helps me today, and it helps me just calm down anytime my mind is racing. Was that when you focus on the past, that's how depression lingers. When you focus into the future, if you live in the future, that's how anxiety builds. All you have to do is live in the present, and that's all I tell myself. And yeah, it's a beautiful journey. Everyone should go up into leadership.
I love that. That's perfect. Thank you, Riyadh. That was a really, really good way to end the quote, to end this podcast. I think you did an incredible job explaining to us things based off of your experience, sharing value, letting us know based on your leadership, what works, what doesn't. So I really want to thank you for that. And thank you for listening to today's episode of the Smart Haven podcast. This is obviously our first episode. Hopefully there'll be more to come. And I hope you all enjoyed this conversation with Riyadh as much as I did. He shared some amazing insights. We got tons of value from this podcast. And if you want to learn more about Riyadh and his team, you can follow him on Instagram at Riyadh_Bahar. That's Riyadh_Bahar. We'll probably put that in the description so you can see. And if you like this episode, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to follow us on Instagram at Smart Haven Pros. So thank you everyone so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, peace out.